Hello, I'm Shreya Sen-Handley, the author of two books with HarperCollins, the recently published short story collection Strange, and the award-winning Memoirs of My Body. I'm also a librettist with the Welsh National Opera, and our opera Migrations will go on tour in the UK next year. I'm a columnist for the international media, writing for the National Geographic, CNN, The Guardian, and more. I'm an illustrator for international publishing and a creative writing teacher. Currently, I'm writing my third book, which is a raft of travel tales told by a mother to her children from lockdown. And I'm writing my monthly column. I'm homeschooling and all the things we're all going through. So I well know how it feels. So I thought I'd tell you a little story from this book, Memoirs of My Body. This was originally a popular column on CNN IBN on gender and sexuality, which the top publishing firm HarperCollins approached me to turn into a full-fledged book. And so it grew from a series of columns into a story where journalism met satire, met memoir, which was not just one woman's story of her life and her body, but the story of every woman. Stories help us travel at a time when we can't, like now, and it also allows us to connect with the lives of others, which we can't do enough of now either. So, with this slice of my book, I hope to take you to the Deli of 25 years ago, which had many things to recommend it, but this was admittedly its seamier side. The first few months in Delhi were cushy enough, staying with family friends in a super rich Delhi neighborhood. But that honeymoon had to end, and I was yanked out of that cozy existence into the scary world of the room to let racket. I first found a shared room in Alaknanda, which seemed above board till I realized all was not kosher below stairs. From the duplex subterranean kitchen where sausages were being stuffed and salami sliced for their deli business, the wrong smells were wafting out. Innocent vegetarian souls that my roomies were, they were oblivious to them, but my keen carnivorous nose sensed something fishy going on. Or the opposite of fishy. The sausage and salami meat did not smell or taste of pig or any farmyard animal I'd ever sunk my teeth into. I was soon refusing to have any on the grounds that I'd turned vegetarian. I hadn't, but had every intention of turning sleuth. During the day, though, our large landlady would position herself between the kitchen door and the passage that led to our bedrooms, reading filmy mag after filmy mag. When she did vacate her chair to make her way to the toilet, her fearsomely mustachioed manservant would take her place with his formidable arms folded in front of him, and the chance to slip into the dimly lit and foul-smelling kitchen of fleshy mysteries would be foiled. What I hadn't expected was that while I watched them, they, especially the man, would be watching me. I began to worry that their dark kitchen was the Delhi equivalent of Soylent Green, and I was next on the menu, though none of my roommates, some of them a good bit heftier than me, had disappeared yet. But I was wrong about the nature of his interest in my flesh. One dark night while I was alone in my room, with my roommate out necking in some back alley, and getting arrested for her pains, the odd job man came barging in. We had the tiniest of barred windows that let little light in, and though I couldn't see him, I knew who he was from his distinctive smell, a combination of unidentified flesh and the betel nut he chewed. As he approached my bed sneakily and lifted the edge of the covers, I held my breath, getting ready to dodge his knife or whatever he used to pin his prey. But then he started stroking my bare leg, and it became clear he hadn't come to make mince of me. He had quite other intentions. So I yelled. I screamed so loud it brought the house down. Down from their bedrooms on the floor above came tumbling the other paying guests. The lights in my room came on to show faces as aghast as mine. The manservant tried to brazen it out with a cock what it's ever about and bull story about a cat, which seemed to be going down well with our audience when one of the women from upstairs suddenly exploded. "You Buttermese cheese!" she cried, as if about to start a qawwali performance. I almost expected the other roomies to jump in with the backup tumri. "You snuck into my room too," she said, waggling her finger at the man. "But there were two of us sleeping there that night, and you chickened out. The only chicken, then, to be found in that kitchen, I thought. Don't you think we saw you sneaking away?" The mustachioed manservant deflated under the two-pronged attack. But just as we girls seemed to be winning, our landlady came steaming in like an overloaded cargo train. Next thing we knew, instead of dismissal or a dressing down for greasy Mr. Moustache, we were being shown the door. As I slung my single rucksack over my shoulder to leave the following morning, I noticed the man was making himself scarce, or had met his end in the landlady's industrial-sized meat grinder. But the lumbering landlady was guarding the kitchen entrance with an extra scary scowl pasted on her face, just for us. Months later we discovered that the man had been arrested for spiriting pet dogs away from their posh South Delhi homes, and not for molestation as we might have hoped, but neither was a surprise. I think I must have inspected more holes in walls than the rat catchers of Hamelin. One was a house full of women in various states of drugging and dishabille, which was very probably a brothel. The woman I imagined to be the madam said I could share a room with one of them, but in a sniffy way that suggested she didn't think I'd make her much money. I already had a career, if not a room, so I made my way to the next property. I usually reconnoitered rooms on weekends, as weekdays were happily and far more productively spent at the television studio. At the next place I was eagerly led to a pleasant, well-lit room by the landlord himself, a task usually delegated to the wife or servant in Deli, who was sometimes interchangeable. I liked the look of the room, but not so much the leering landlord. It struck me that I had been brought into the room through the man's bedroom. "And how do I let myself in or out, since I work at a television studio and keep unusual hours?" I asked, hoping to be pointed to a door leading out that I hadn't noticed. "Not to bother, Betty," he said, his nicotine-stained smile widening. "You will be coming through my room, but think of it as yours. I shall even wait up for you when you're late." I didn't wait for more. Eventually I found a room with a kitchenette and a shared terrace in Chittaranjan Park, the stronghold of the domiciled Bengalis of Delhi. I thought that might be a good thing, that they might embrace me, platonically for a change, as one of their own. So I moved in, lock, stock and barrel, that is, one rucksack crammed with very strange clothes, one load of long johns I'd never wear, as my parents held firm to the belief that Delhi had Arctic winters, and one frying pan. They also hoped I would learn to fry an egg at least. While I looked around my new room, the reception committee of the landlord and his grown sons sized me up. From the dark interior of the house came a quavering female voice announcing the imminent dishing up of March bhat, and the younger men scuttled out. My portly landlord, in a hurry to leave as well, handed over the key with a very brief with much waiting, lecture on the fine morals of the Bengali woman. I could have whooped with joy. I finally had a place to stay and it wasn't too bad. But an obstacle was waiting just round the corner, or rather, like with the last place, it was the absence of one that was a problem. There appeared to be neither lock nor handle on my side of an interconnecting door. So I asked very nicely about arrangements to secure it from my side. And the sweet syrupy miasma that had hung in the air suddenly turned to frost. "Cano lagbe?" asked the patriarch testily. For security and privacy, I stated, at which he drew himself to his full 5 feet and said, "আপনি কি আমাদের চোর না molester ডাকছেন?" And without further ado, including doing anything about the door, he stormed out. And I realized why the last girl who'd roomed there had moved in such a hurry. Had anything happened, or had the implications of a door without a lock spooked her as it did me? I had paid a deposit, however, and had nowhere else to go that night. But I had a plan. In the room was a cupboard that looked flimsy enough for me to push across the floor, but not so rickety it could be knocked over without ruckus or effort in the dead of night. It took me nearly an hour to move it, but I did get some sleep that night. I woke, however, to golmaal, or 3 very golmaals kicking up a fuss. The Bengali bhadralok had discovered they'd been outfoxed by a pint-sized Bengali woman and weren't happy. I was sent on my way with an outraged bong flea in my ear, and without my deposit. I wish I'd known then about the handbook all these Delhi landlords owned, and not just landlords, but a great many men around the world. It tells them all they need to know about women. Ain't much to us, you know. The most thumbed bit is frequently the section on feminine harlotry called the slut scale. S for slatternly, L for loose, U for uninhibited, and T for tramps. It puts forward the age-old and still firmly held belief that most women are just waiting to be invaded by man's many icky, sticky, and often stubby protrusions. There are, of course, degrees of decadence amongst us, but we do all figure somewhere on this global slapper index. From the totally innocent 5-year-old to the 85-year-old grandma who would rather find her teeth than a man, we've all managed to lure some hapless man to his doom with our uncontrollable, coming out of our ears sexuality. Indian politician Vijay Vargiya wisely warns women, "Your provocative dresses are responsible for all deviations in society," while Iranian cleric Hojatul Islam Kazim Siddiqui thunders, "Many women who don't dress modestly lead young men astray and spread adultery in society, which increases earthquakes." And if you thought such wisdom was the preserve of the East, check this pearl out from American media mogul Pat Robertson. Feminism encourages women to leave their husbands, kill their children, practice witchcraft, destroy capitalism, and become lesbians. This can't go on. No further man-beast, deeply flawed economic system or slippy-slidey tectonic plate should be endangered by our earth-shatteringly sluttish ways. But just how slutty are you? From Delhi we travel back to Britain, going back all the way to 1968, when it was a psychedelic cosmopolitan melting pot, but stirred up by politicians thundering about the rivers of blood they said would flow through Britain's streets if immigration was not stopped. And it was shaken by anti-immigration marches as a result. Into this cauldron came doctors from the Commonwealth, including those from India, like the characters in my libretto for the Welsh National Opera's production, Migrations. Doctors invited over to help build the still growing NHS at the time. They were vital to the health of the nation. Not so different from the current scenario then. And because we are celebrating the NHS and how crucial they are to our well-being, I will read 2 snippets from my libretto about the NHS doctors out to you. It forms a part of a larger production called Migrations. It's a modern multicultural opera that is moving, funny, and sumptuous, and will be on tour in the UK next year. All the interwoven stories in this opera are about migrations of different sorts. from the sailing of the Mayflower to America 400 years ago, to birds on their annual journey, to the arrival of the doctors from other climes to shore up the National Health Service, as I said. This opera has been written by a team of award-winning writers that include Sarah Woods, Edson Burton, Miles Chambers, Eric Galley Charles, and Sir David Pountney, who will also direct this thinking extravaganza. And the music has been composed by Will Todd. Here's part of a song sung by the villain of my piece, the opportunistic demagogue politician, the pinstriped man, who plays on the anxieties of a disaffected people. This is early in the story, and the setting is an anti-migrant march. I will read it without the interjections of the crowd, which actually form part of the song. So it won't be like it's on stage, but might still give you a taste of a night at the opera. In 20 years, the black man will lord it over the white man. Already they're taking over, taking our jobs and our place. They're taking our place at the table reserved for their betters. Put your fate in my hands. Let me take us back to a finer time, when slaves were slaves and real men white. Let me return what's yours. Put your fate in my hands. Don't give them an inch, they'll take a mile. Don't be fooled by that dazzling smile. Put your fate in my trust. Or the Thames will foam with blood like the Tiber. Let's fight this migrant flood. Let me recover our once golden land. Put your fate in my hands. Later in the story, almost as counter-argument, one of the Indian doctors, Neera, sings her song about the human experience that binds us all. We've all been migrants in some way and at some time, and she says, and so it's been for centuries. Nothing is original anywhere. No one is unmixed. You may see, on looking to your past, your ancestors treading the same perilous path to unknown climes and uncertain welcome of migrants here and now. No land remains untouched by foreign feet, and so it's been for centuries. Which of us is an original? Who amongst us is unmixed? We all took the road from Africa, fanning out across the world. No land is untouched by foreign feet.